Is that what case they're like to talk about?
Too small. Does that and stuff like that? Could not get any call them. It's like I've never seen it. It's like that line. I was thinking this man must be big, but I just don't know. Because he was just like, I didn't listen to him, like, hey, what if I just do that? Can I say that? Whatever happened.
It's like, it's pretty narrow.
I think it's 300 seats.
Incoming.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
There you go.
we should be starting shortly.
Appreciate your sentiment.
I guess it's going to start soon. One thing I forgot to do is check everybody's press ID. So if I can see your press ID, that would be great. Thank you very much. You young man? Okay, you're good. Thank you. Good.
Did they get a
Gino just got kicked it out back, and he's gonna get flogged.
I didn't go this time though. I went to all of them.
The spring one is better than the
Oh, God.
This lady said, she's like, this parking issue is like a spring one. It's not as one of the spring ones before.
Huh.
This parking is crazy, but.
That took me a while to figure out. I was like, why did that happen? It hasn't always been that way.
No, I don't think so. It's probably 5 years.
You just went into
Hey. Climb. Climb. At least you're wearing pants for this assignment. Where do we live? Everybody's been waiting. This stuff is going to have to move. Whose is this right here?
Hmm?
So who is this right here? This big one.
And yours?
It's going to have to move because I can't put my things down. Should I just move?
With the podium.
Is it? Is it ours? And I just don't know it?
Yeah, I think I'm hearing it on the loudspeaker. Unfortunately, it's got my label put to it.
Okay, this is going to have to move.
I gotta sit up there.
Okay, Lauren, this is going to have to move. Oh, thanks. I need to put my book down.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not holding the space for me.
What's that about?
Sure.
Can you hear it here?
I can.
Okay. Maybe that's not good either.
That's not great, but that's what you want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Can y'all come up here? Or some of you? Yeah. Yeah?
Can you just stand
Two of you?
on either side
Yeah.
of him? Yeah, thank you.
Oh, did you do that? I did that. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it very much. I want to start by, in the back, introducing people that are here from DPD. Yeah.
I'm Jasmine Barber, I'm the DPD director.
Okay.
Charles Fitzgerald, First Assistant Chief.
Carrie Sloan, Deputy Chief.
Okay. Pat, you go ahead.
Detective Little, CAU.
Hello, Maddie-Lana David, Director of the Michigan State Appellate Defender Office.
Could you spell your first name, please?
Yes, it's Marilena.
Yeah.
Valerie Newman, Director of the Conviction Integrity Unit for the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office.
Todd Bettison, Chief of Police, Detroit.
Tracy Brain, Director of the Cooley Innocence Project.
Spell your last name, please.
Brain, B-R-A-M-E.
John?
John Hallway, Senior Advisor of the Quattrone Center for the Fair Administration of Justice at the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School.
Thank you. So we are here to talk about some real innovation that's happened here in Michigan, and as Mr. Holloway will tell you, this, I believe this is the first of its kind. Wait. First of its kind in the state of Michigan. But I first want to just make some introductory remarks and say when I first established the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office Conviction Integrity Unit in 2017, the first in the state of Michigan, by the way, I wanted several things to be clear. That no prosecutor's office should be afraid to look in earnest at its previous cases, that this was not going to be a unit in name only, and I think that was proven when I hired Valerie Newman, who this is, I want to say, her life's work almost, doing this type of work, and that we were going to be serious about this work. We would not wholesale do anything, and we would be deliberate and thorough throughout the entire process. And Among other things, we would learn valuable lessons along the way, and perhaps even figure out a way to lessen wrongful and unjust convictions. I knew nothing about the Quattrone Center at that time, but I learned about it several years later. Of course, I found out very quickly that Valerie Newman knew all about it, and I was committed to finding out more, and that led me to learning about the Sentinel review process that we're going to be here talking about today. Before then, I always wondered what we would constructively do with what we were learning in case after case after case in the CIU. I did not know that there already existed a vehicle to take a deep dive into a singular exoneration case, and that would, of course, the Sentinel review that you can hear about today. Director Holloway will talk about that in a minute, but I personally wanted and pushed for this review for one of our exoneration cases. It took a while to happen because first it was cost prohibitive. And then eventually a grant was received by the center, the Quattrone Center, that entirely covered the cost of this innovative project. The steps that happened were as follows. A case had to be chosen, and Valerie Newman chose that case. It was an exhaustive process, but we wanted to make sure that we had the right case to do this on our first time out. And when I say first time out, I completely want to do this process again in future years. The stakeholders for this case, this wrongful conviction case, were identified. You see some of those stakeholders here today. We had initial meetings to explain the project and the processes for this project and get buy-in from all of the stakeholders, and that was critically important. One thing that is really clear and will be made clear throughout the remarks today, that this process was not a process that assigned and assessed blame or finger pointing. It was very important to me, and I think everybody, that that be done so we can have honest discussions and have honest recommendations and honest vehicles to make these changes. And once we told people that this was not a situation where we were assessing blame or pointing fingers, almost all the stakeholders were in it for the long haul. And Chief Bedison was one of the first to sign up, I have to say. Sadly, we were not able to convince all of the stakeholders to participate, and one was permanently unavailable because of his untimely death. Then Valerie Newman worked with the Quattrone Center to compile a list of people that had to be interviewed. As you can imagine, there were tens and tens of people that were considered, and I don't know how many interviews were done, but there are many, many interviews that were done. Again, a time-consuming and exhaustive process. The interviews were then, of course, conducted, and then detailed meetings among all the stakeholders took place. And that, again, was a lengthy process and a very necessary process. I think we met for 3 days, all day long. Then the report was drafted by the Quattrone Center, and finally the finalization of the report. The full report is 54 pages long with a 6-page executive summary, but I hope really that you will read the whole report. In all, this process lasted for 18 months, and in my view, while prickly at times, it was well worth it, and I hope, as I said before, to repeat this process again with another case in the future. There were many recommendations made, and it was heartening to know that quite a few of the recommendations, specifically as it results to the Detroit Police Department and my office, had already been implemented or were in the process of being implemented for that change before this review even began. There are some recommendations that we still must work on. Some will be difficult, and many will require other members of the criminal justice system to participate and acquiesce. Some of these recommendations, one of them in particular, will require a revisit by the Michigan Supreme Court in the way the law is directing us as prosecutors now. And of course, resources, and this will be a surprise to no one, are always an issue, especially when you have a huge office like we do. We're the largest in the state of Michigan. We do over 60% of all the criminal cases in the state. It's probably higher than that, probably close to 65 or 70. And also the volume, when we have an office like mine, it's hard to implement some of these changes, but we intend to try. We're not going to let that be a barrier to making some of these recommendations work. We can always be better and do better, and we are committed to doing so. So if we can help Director Holloway, I knew I'd make that mistake, to
No
come
problem.
up and talk about the Quattrone Center.
Thank you very much, Prosecutor Worthy, and I want to extend my thanks to Chief Edison, the Conviction Integrity Unit, the State Appellate Defender Office, the Cooley Innocence Project, and the Third Circuit Court here in Detroit, all of whom collaborated on this process. The Quattrone Center was created about 15 years ago as sort of an add-on to the important work that Innocence Projects and the Innocence Network around the country does to identify and exonerate individuals who have been wrongfully convicted and incarcerated of crimes they didn't commit. unlike those wonderful organizations, we were created as a research and policy center to learn from cases of wrongful conviction and create processes to prevent them from occurring in the future. Over the past 15 years, we have evolved a process called Sentinel Event Review that takes quality improvement and safety training along with root cause analysis from other complex industries like healthcare and transportation and applies them to the criminal justice system. We start from the premise that our criminal justice system is made up of good faith, well-trained professionals that can nonetheless find themselves in situations where decisions are made that lead to unwanted outcomes. Unwanted outcomes in the criminal justice system are varied, officer-involved shootings, deaths in custody, and certainly wrongful convictions. And we work closely with conviction integrity units around the country. As Prosecutor Worthy said, the Wayne County Conviction Integrity Unit is well known for not being a conviction unit in name only, and Val's work is extraordinary, and I think you can see that in the long list of exonerations they have voluntarily identified and made right. And so we were thrilled to work with them to pilot and test the Sentinel Event Review concept here on the exoneration of Eric Anderson, and you have the report with the specifics. So I won't go into detail on the recommendations. I think those have been described and you can read them in the report. But what I do want to focus on is much is made of the criminal justice system being adversarial, and there are a lot of reasons why we've structured it that way. This process was actually not adversarial. This was a collaborative process where all of the participants agreed that we don't want a system that generates these outcomes, and we're going to learn from them. And when what you see in all of these cases is it's never just one thing. We start with an arrest that was inaccurate, but then all of the checks and balances that we already have in the system are not, for some reason, able to pick up this case. Generally, a prosecutor would screen it and say this doesn't hold water, or the defense bar would identify it, or something during trial. None of those things happened in this case, and so there were opportunities for learning from each organization that participated, and that's why it was so valuable that Prosecutor Worthy and Chief Bedison were able to gather so many of the participants in the Wayne County criminal justice system, because each organization was able to learn something and take recommendations for change forward. Those conversations are always challenging. Nobody likes to hear, hey, you can do things better. But I personally was very impressed with everybody's recognition that the obligation to improve going forward doesn't mean we're bad at our job today. And to take on that responsibility is something that not every jurisdiction does every day. So it was really, I think, a very heartening process and something everybody should be proud of that we've accomplished today. So we were thrilled to be a part of it, and I'm particularly delighted to hear you say you want to do more. We look forward to working with you to do that. And I should also say that—
Assuming you get another grant.
Well, I want to thank the Bureau of Justice Assistance, part of the U.S. Department of Justice, for being the providers of that grant and making this possible. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Thank you, John. It was definitely my pleasure to be able to participate in the Sentinel Review as promised. And when I became interim chief and ultimately selected for chief, my mantra is continuous improvement, making things better, being transparent. And we have to really be able to look back and also look forward. With the review, I welcomed it from the very beginning. When Prosecutor Worthy brought it to me, I said I'm all in. And I would even encourage other departments, other law enforcement agencies to do the same. I know that we'll be able to continuously improve and implement things, but we've already implemented many things. And just from 2010, when this incident occurred, to where we are today in 2025, a lot of things have changed, especially when it comes to technology. Even with the Sentinel Review and being a part of the process with the continuous improvement, when we reviewed the case and looked at this young man, Eric Anderson, who went to prison in 2010 for a crime that he didn't commit, and in examining his alibi, and to me, he actually had the perfect alibi, because at the time of the robbery, he actually was the victim of being shot. And so when you look at being able to corroborate an alibi and you look at what we have today, I'm confident and know for a fact that in 2025 it wouldn't have happened. And so as we look towards the things from the review, with the Sentinel Review, John, we at the Detroit Police Department, our detectives, our investigators, all of us, as we've invested in things such as license plate readers, as we've invested in our Greenlight, Project Greenlight, where we have excellent video, where you can see in high quality HD exactly who it is no dispute about that. But in 2010, if you all remember, when you used to get the surveillance video, whether it was from a Coney Island or a gas station, if it was my own mother, it would be very, very difficult because it was so grainy to point anybody out. And so with that being said, I welcome more of these type of cases, because the last thing that we want to occur is not get it right and have an innocent person spend any amount of time in jail. So for Mr. Anderson, that's 10 years he'll never get back. But my commitment, working with my partners here, is to ensure that nobody else has to go through that. Thank you.
Thank you. Val Newman?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Prosecutor Worthy. I'm thrilled to be here today. I still feel like none of this is real. From the minute Kim offered me the job in 2017, I never thought I would be here in a prosecutor's office doing this work after 2 decades of being a defense attorney. But our numbers speak for themselves in the Conviction Integrity Unit, and they speak to Prosecutor Worthy's commitment to this work. There is virtually no other unit in the country that has done the work that this unit has done in this amount of time, and that's directly attributable because we have a prosecutor who supports this work wholeheartedly. This next step, this Sentinel Review, is a next step in that process. It is really important to look case by case by case and see what's been done wrong. If a conviction is good, then it's affirmed and it doesn't go to the prosecutor. If it's not good, then we work as a team. My team works together and we present that to the prosecutor, and ultimately she'll make a decision whether or not she thinks someone, that we've made the case that someone is deserving of relief. And to do that is extremely important work, and we've granted relief, or judges have granted relief in 43 cases where we recommended it. But it's not enough. It's not enough to just do that. We, as Prosecutor Worthy said, we have to learn the lessons. We have to look at these cases. We have to look at the patterns. We have to look at what we're seeing and what can we do better. Not just what can prosecutors do better, not just what police can do better, but what can all of us do better? How can we come together as a group and say, nobody becomes a police officer to put an innocent person in prison. Nobody becomes a prosecutor to put an innocent person in prison. It's not why people do these jobs. But these mistakes happen, these things happen, and we need to do everything in our power to figure out what processes we can put in place so that they don't continue to happen. And so the fact that this is a collaborative process is important. I think even more important is the collaboration was done by people doing the work. This is not just people at the top saying, oh, I think this is how things could be done better, by people 10 steps below me. This was the people doing the work, saying every single recommendation that is in this report, we can implement, and we will find a way to work towards implementing it. And that's what makes this process so important for everyone to understand and know about, is that there's a commitment here, a strong commitment from all the parties to make the changes, to make this process better, and to continue this work of systemic improvement in addition to the work that we're doing on a case-by-case basis. Thank you.
We're going to take some questions in a few minutes, but I honestly do not think, and I really believe this, that there are many places in our great state of Michigan where we can have this collaboration of folks that we're willing to do this work. If you think about how people are across the state, to have a CIU in the first place, and I think we still only have 4 in the entire state. Even 4 others in the entire state. But have a police department that didn't flinch when we asked them to be involved, to have SATO, the State Appellate Defender's Office, be involved, to always the support of the Cooley Law Innocence Project, and the judges that were involved, not the original judge that did this case, but the judges that were involved, And unfortunately, we could not have the involvement. We would have loved to have the involvement of the defense attorney, but again, he did pass away before this review. So again, I'm very, very proud of this effort. I know there will be some that will criticize, but the key thing is there are two key takeaways, I think. Number one, we're not afraid to take these critical views. And number two, when you have a blameless environment, it causes everyone to come to the table with open minds and open hearts, willing to do the work. And that's what happened in this case. So any questions?
Question for Val. How many people have been released by Wayne County CIU? And how does this study, does your take away from this study as you examine all the great work you guys have been doing?
So released is hard to say, Simon, because some people were serving time on other crimes. So I say 43 people were granted relief from their convictions. Most of those people were released from prison as a result of the grant of relief, and most of those people were serving mandatory life sentences. So it's a significant number and a significant amount of relief. And in terms of the changes that we're making, a lot of these changes, as Prosecutor Worthy said, we have been identifying patterns and ways for improvement. So we have had some continuous improvement. The difference here is all the parties coming together and finding out how we can all work together to make the system better.
Quick question, Sandra from the Detroit Free Press. What are those lessons that you guys are learning? What are the patterns that you have noticed? 43 is not a insignificant number. So what were those patterns that led to these?
I think it's safe for me to say that we have problems with informants in the jail. We've had a few issues with the science and the data that was in existence at the time. We've had a few other police integrity issues, and again, not just Detroit, we're talking about the whole county of Wayne. And the integrity issues were not from Detroit at this particular time, the ones that I'm thinking of. And so we've had generalized patterns like that. We are looking now at some individual officers whose names have appeared in these cases more often than others. That's a really hard process, and it's going to be a long time before we get to the meat of all that. It's a lot of, I don't think people, I want people to understand that this is backbreaking, hard, investigative work every day. And they have to go through boxes of material and do all kinds of, get records from MDLC and many other places. It's not just something you can look at and blink and say. They do a very thorough work, and I demand it. And I take them through the paces when they bring something to me. And most of the time we agree, sometimes we don't. And so it's hard work, and I intellectually I understand why people may not want to do it. But I don't understand any office across this country that's a prosecutor's office, DA's office, who turns a blind eye to their previous work, even if they weren't the one at the helm at that time. It doesn't matter. You have to be willing to look at it. And we have a big backlog, and so we have a lot of cases that we still have to look at. But this team, the CIU team, works tirelessly. And I think Val works probably 24/7. But her team is also just as committed, as am I.
And what were some of those recommendations from this review that you guys intend to implement?
I'll talk about two. One of the recommendations that I was pleased to say that we have, since 2010, changed. We did not have a digital system. And I have been talking about and yelling about digital systems since 2005. We were not able to directly coordinate everything, and now we can. And I would like our digital system to go a whole lot further than it is now. I'd like to even identify trends in our charging processes that we can't yet do, but we're working there. So that was one. There is one that is particularly disturbing to me in terms of our Supreme Court is trying to walk us back from looking at cases as carefully as we do. And by that I mean they don't want us to do any kind of investigating. But we're not investigating. We are not going out arresting people. That's for law enforcement to do. But we are, when we're looking at cases and we make a determination from looking at, take a thorough look at a case, that we may not have the right person, so we don't even charge them in the first place. So they want us to kind of back up from that. So I'm going to have some discussions with our higher courts as well to make this work. Other ones, we need to have better collaborations with our judges. And as well-intentioned as they are, there are some processes that they go by and some timelines that are just untenable when it comes to really wanting to look at these cases. I'm never going to have a staff of 600 people or 700 people like some DA's offices do across the country. That would be lovely, and that would mean we can take more care and even more attention to each and every case. But we don't have that luxury here. But I do have to say, that Warren Evans and the CEO and the commissioners have given me over the last few years many, many more resources than I had before. They are allowing me to do things like, bonuses to retain people. When I started in the prosecutor's office, probably 75, 80% of the people there, the prosecutors there, had probably 25 years plus experience, and that's just not the case anymore. So we have to be able to recruit, retain, and attract experienced talent. So those are some of the recommendations that were talked about, but we have a lot more work to do, and some recommendations we haven't touched yet, but we are trying to get there, and we will get there.
Can you release the names of the officers who are, that keep, recruiting in?
I never, and I never talk about investigations that are in progress. That, to me, is compromising, another way to compromise an investigation. Until we're ready to release it, and we will.
John Hewitt from WWJ. I'd like to follow up on that realm, though, and I ask this question with respect. I'm trying to get my hands around how often when these cases arise do you feel it's more procedural, process-driven? The chief has referenced technology improvements versus maybe overzealous investigations, reliance on unreliable witnesses, etc. I guess what I'm driving at is the question of people bending the rules on trying to prosecute or get cases versus procedural issues in the process.
I'm not sure I would agree with the premise of your question.
I'm asking
Yeah.
what the situation is.
Again, I think that's more a police question than it is more a police question than a prosecutor question. We have to rely on what's brought to us. We do advise. Our canons of ethics say we must advise the police. And so then we also, of course, we try to look at cases very carefully and determine if they're cases we can charge. But I think John is probably the best person to answer that question.
To be clear, I'm asking what you found, if as best you can paraphrase what we're seeing. I have no idea where it lies.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, this was a review of a single case. This was not a review of many cases. We were talking about trends and things. That's not what this process was. This process, we looked at a single unwanted outcome, a single exoneration, and we worked backwards to find the contributing factors and then to design recommendations that are tailored to those contributing factors. In this case, we didn't find anything overzealous. We didn't find any misconduct. We've done these reviews. I'm from Philadelphia. We've got our set of police that are under similar investigation as well. This has happened in some other cities, Chicago. That's all in the papers. So I understand the question that you're asking, right? What we find when we do these reviews is, first of all, that we find much less intentional misconduct than one might think in these cases. When we do, the process can still incorporate that. A blame-free process doesn't mean no accountability. And what we do is, if we were to find intentional misconduct, and let me stress again, not the case here, if we were to find it, the question that the system should ask is, why did that individual think they could do this, and why didn't we detect it sooner? So the system kind of holes that we try to tighten up are about deterrence and detection of that intentional misconduct. And so the process can work with that happening, but this case didn't find any, and it was not a systemic review of all cases. It was a review of the Eric Anderson case.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, we are still looking at some. I was asked a question about trends, which is why I answered that way. And we're still looking at a lot of those cases. So again, I want to make that clear. That wasn't this case, but we are looking at cases that have patterns and trends, and lots of patterns and trends.
Prosecutor Worthy mentioned that you wanted to pick the right case. What was it about Mr. Anderson's case that made it the right case? Why this one?
Well, it's a relic in our world, in the CIU world. It's a relatively recent case. I mean, the first case we did was Richard Phillips. He'd been in for over 50 years. So if we pick a case that's at this point over 50 years old, I don't think you can learn something from every case, but obviously things have changed drastically. Most people are not going to be alive to interview them. So we wanted to pick something with some recency to it. The other thing that we were looking for from a case was something that was easily, for our first Sentinel review, easily digestible. It's a pretty simple case. It's a shooting. He had an alibi. Could it be corroborated? There was a lot for us to look at in terms of all the different things that were involved with the case. And so, in every case, there's a lot of things at play, but the primary issue in this case was identification. So it was also a case where it was ripe for us to say, we know we can come out of this process with recommendations for everybody to make the system better. We know that misidentification is a driver of wrongful convictions. It's one of the main causes of wrongful convictions. And so those were the primary reasons for choosing this case.
Here at Bird with the Detroit News, are we going to be able to get a copy of this report?
It was sent to you during the press.
Oh, perfect.
You should have it.
And was there anyone who
Yes, but I'm not going to name names.
Can you say where they were from, like prosecutor's office, police?
I am not going to say. But you're reporters.
Just one more thing. If Eric Anderson were here now, in this room, what would you want to say to him, having done all of this?
Well,
Message?
Eric was involved in the process, so I don't want anyone to think because he's not here today that he was not involved in the process. He was John. Whoops, where's John? John and his team interviewed Eric as part of this process. I've talked with Eric about this. He knows that this press conference is going on. He has a copy of the report, and I think what he would say is, "Thank you for taking my case and using it to make the system better."
John, do you have anything to add to that? No. Okay. All right. Anything else? You have the report. Please read it. It's good reading. I think that you will understand why we are all so passionate about this process, about we want it to continue, we want to do better, we want to be better, and we don't want to see anyone that has not committed a crime even do 1 day in prison. And this is, for me, a pathway to hopefully making sure, or trying to make sure, I can't have absolutes, that this doesn't happen again.
I just have one last question, if I may. Beyond Wayne County, whoever wants to answer, is there any type of metrics as to a guesstimate as to how many cases this would apply to? Meaning, you mentioned 47 exonerations, I believe, right?
43 out of Michigan, out of Wayne County.
They're not all exonerations. The 43 cases where we granted relief, not all exonerations.
Thank you. Against how many cases prosecuted? And again, I'm looking beyond Wayne County on this, but trying to get my arms around how often this happens, and maybe it's a difficult question to get your arms around.
Probably John's the best person to feel that.
So we actually have looked at this. There are 4,000 confirmed exonerations, roughly. There's a website called the National Registry of Exonerations, actually run at University of Michigan, that catalogs exonerations. It's kind of hard to know how many people are in prison now for something they didn't do, so we can't kind of prove that. The database of capital punishment exonerees is actually large enough to allow for statistical sampling, which is itself a fairly disturbing fact. And the data, you can slice and dice that a couple different ways, and you keep coming up with an error rate of 4% in capital cases. So the likelihood is that 1 in every 25 people on death rows across the United States right now is innocent, but we don't know which individuals those are. That would be about 90 people just on death rows alone. It's likely that we make errors in other cases that aren't quite as severe as capital punishment cases, and that the error rate is greater, but if we were to be conservative about it, a 2% error rate would be something that you could use as kind of back of the envelope for how often these things happen, and that's in a variety of felonies and misdemeanors kind of across the board.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for coming.